Hello everyone, welcome back to another thrilling recap. Today, we are going to recap John Wick, as we all know, the popular dog lover. Let's get started. A car, steered by John Wick, collides with a wall. Bloodied and wounded, he stumbles out of the vehicle. He applies pressure to an injury in his abdomen. He retrieves his phone and watches a video of his wife, Helen, on the beach. While he crawls to the side, John slumps and closes his eyes. Several days prior to this, on an overcast day, John awakens. He experiences flashbacks of being with Helen, the two of them sharing a meal, then a shot of them kissing, and finally the moment when she faints in his arms. John is then depicted with her in a hospital bed. He kisses her forehead and gazes at the doctor, who takes his clipboard and exits. The next scene shows John holding a pendant in his hand as he steps out of his car. His wife succumbed to an illness that claimed her life. The day of her burial has arrived. Everyone departs. John stands by her grave while a man observes from a distance. After the ceremony, John's former comrade, Marcus, approaches him and inquires how he's coping after all this time. They engage in conversation, and Marcus remarks that he's simply checking in on an old companion. He then bids farewell and departs. Following the service, John is depicted at his residence. He commences tidying up when the doorbell chimes. He opens the door to find a delivery lady standing there. She requests John's signature on some documents and hands him a parcel. Inside is a small beagle. Helen has left a note for John. In the letter, she wrote that she has come to terms with her passing and wishes for John to find love again, starting with the puppy. As John reads the letter, tears well up in his eyes. He takes the dog out of its enclosure and inspects its flower-adorned collar, which leads John to the realization that Helen named the dog Daisy. He lays out a few blankets for the dog, but it appears reluctant to leave the bed. Nevertheless, John lifts it and gently sets it on the floor. The next day, the dog climbs on the bed and wakes John, and then follows him all around the house. John then pours some cornflakes for himself and the dog and tells it that they are going to buy some proper food for her. He bonds with the puppy, and they spend the day driving around in his vintage Mustang. He pulls over beside 3 Russian gangsters, including Joseph Tarasov, the offspring of the crime Lord Vigo Tarasov. Joseph advances toward John's vehicle, admires it, and then inquires about its cost. John responds by saying it's not available for purchase. Joseph proceeds to berate John in Russian, claiming that everything has a price, using offensive language, assuming he won't comprehend. However, John corrects him by speaking Russian and informs him that not this one. Joseph was caressing Daisy at the time, but upon hearing this, he becomes furious and is on the brink of reacting when one of his associates restrains him and tells John to have a pleasant day. Later that day, John takes his car to an abandoned construction area and starts drifting all over the place to vent out his frustration. He almost runs into some trucks, but just stops in time. Daisy must relieve herself while John is getting ready for bed, so John takes her downstairs. When they arrive, 2 shadowy guys stand in front of John, while a third grabs a bat and whacks him in the head. While Daisy whimpers, the man begins to pound on John. One of the men attacks the dog and snaps her neck. One of the men asks to find the keys, and the other responds that he's found them. After taking the keys, the guy removes his disguise, revealing himself to be Joseph. He insults John and asks him to sleep well before knocking him out. After some time, when John rouses from sleep, he approaches his deceased pet, lying beside him, gently caressing her head. He gives the dog a proper burial and proceeds to clean up the chaos in his house, all the while haunted by memories of his late wife and the harrowing attack from the previous night. Joseph drives John's Mustang to Aurelio's establishment. Joseph informs Aurelio that he requires forged documents and a new license plate for the car, but Aurelio immediately identifies the vehicle and demands to know where Joseph acquired it. Joseph brags about stealing the car and killing the guy's dog. Aurelio orders him to leave the shop, but Joseph retorts that they have control over him. Aurelio responds that he does not work for him, but works with his father and then hits Joseph in the face. One of Joseph's goons pulls out a gun and points it at Aurelio, but the other stops him from shooting. Joseph gets up and insults Aurelio and tells him that he will take his business someplace else. Later, John stops by the shop and inquires about the car. Aurelio replies that the car was here and that Joseph is Vigo's son. Vigos phones Aurelio later that night, inquiring why he struck Joseph. Aurelio just replies that because his son took John Wick's car and murdered his dog. In response, Vigo just says, "Oh." Vigo seems worried and goes down to his penthouse as one of his men congratulates him, but Vigo tells him that he wants to meet with his son. Meanwhile, John enters his basement with a sledgehammer and begins bashing the floor open. He is revealed to have been looking for a cache of weapons and gold coins to address this problem. Vigo meets with Joseph at his house. He first hands Joseph a drink and tells him that he is wearing a nice jacket before he punches his kid in the stomach twice to scold him, reminding him of who he had just wronged.
John will come for you, and you will do nothing because you can do nothing.
Vigo's henchman asks if he can leave, but Vigo orders him to stay. Joseph is then told by Vigo that John Wick used to be linked with him until he met Helen and chose to quit. John had a reputation as Baba Yaga the Boogeyman, or rather, as the man who was summoned to assassinate the Boogeyman. Vigo tells his son about the time he saw John Wick kill 3 men in a bar with a pencil and reminds Joseph just how dangerous John Wick is. When John contemplated retirement and a life with Helen, Vigo presented him with an insurmountable challenge, one that hinted at multiple high-profile assassinations in a brief time frame. To Vigo's astonishment, John not only succeeded, but his efforts were pivotal in the establishment of the Tarasov Syndicate. Joseph asserts to his father that he can handle the situation and will see the job through. However, his father forewarns him that John will come for him, and there's nothing he can do to prevent it. After this ominous warning to Joseph, Vigo attempts to contact John by phone in an effort to resolve the situation, but John abruptly hangs up. That night, Vigo dispatches a dozen hitmen to John's residence with the intent to eliminate him. John effortlessly dispatches all of them, engaging in a fierce battle with the final few before delivering a fatal blow to the last assailant. A police officer arrives at the front door and knocks. John addresses him by name and asks if there's been a noise complaint, to which the officer confirms. The officer questions whether John is back in the game, alluding to the body visible behind John. John claims that he's simply sorting things out. The officer bids him farewell and departs to clean up the area and dispose of the deceased. John contacts an underworld cleanup crew he's previously worked with, and they seem well aware that this won't be their last involvement with him. Vigo approaches John's associate, Marcus, offering him a $2 million contract to assassinate John Wick. He also instructs his assistant, Avi, to issue a request for other candidates to fill the position. Marcus readily accepts the offer. John checks into the New York Continental Hotel, an exclusive establishment catering to the criminal underworld that strictly prohibits assassinations on its premises. He intends to stay there for the duration of his business. Perkins, an acquaintance of John, is present at the hotel. Winston, the manager and owner of the Continental, is another of John's old friends. When John inquires, Winston informs him that Joseph can be found at a nightclub called Red Circle. John enters the club where Joseph and his friends are reveling. He encounters an old acquaintance and instructs him to take the day off. As the man expresses his gratitude, Joseph is indulging in a night of champagne and the company of women in a lavish Russian bathhouse when John eliminates one of his associates and approaches via the club's lower floor. Upon seeing John, gunfire erupts as Joseph makes a hasty escape. John kills every hitman in his way, but he loses Joseph in a getaway car as he departs. He returns to the Continental to get a gash in his side, sewn up after being stabbed in the stomach by one of Vigo's guys with a bottle. The doctor warns John that if he strains himself too much, his sutures will rip. John claims that the bourbon he purchased earlier would cover the painkiller portion of his rehabilitation. Marcus climbs to the roof of the building across the street late at night and sets his eyes on John, who is sleeping. He notices someone arriving via the mirror. He shoots a warning shot at John. Perkins starts firing at John, but he manages to avoid her. She informs him that if she violates the hotel's regulations and murders John for Vigo, he will give her $4 million. He struggles with Perkins until he has her in a headlock and offers her compassion in exchange for information. She informs John that Vigo stores the majority of his assets in a church basement. John knocks Perkins out and leaves her with Harry for one of their organization's gold coins. Perkins is shackled to a chair by Harry, who is unaware that she has dislocated her thumb and is slipping away. She exits the handcuffs and covers Harry's face with a pillow before shooting him. John visits Vigo's hidden stockpile of cash and business documents in the chapel. Following the shooting of the other guards in the church, John compels the priest to lead him to the vault. He dismisses the ladies in the vault and sets fire to the entire structure. Vigo hears about the fire just as he is about to be trapped in a barrage of bullets from John. Despite killing the majority of Vigo's men, he is knocked unconscious when one SUV collides with another, pushing John to the ground. Vigo apprehends him and questions why he's gone to such lengths for vengeance over a car and a dog. Joseph took the puppy away from John, who claims it was a gift from his dead wife. He also warns Vigo that he has the option of handing Joseph over to him or dying with him. Vigo abandons him to his thugs, who suffocate him with a garbage bag. Marcus, on the other hand, is watching from the adjacent building and shoots one of the hitmen in the head, allowing John to take out the other. Only John is left alive as John pulls out his revolver and fires at Vigo's escape vehicle. Vigo is forced to inform John that Joseph is hidden at a Brooklyn safe house. Even though the safe house is secured by armed men, John kills them all and storms the property. He destroys all the getaway vehicles with bombs and then catches up to Joseph and puts a bullet in his stomach and then shoots him in the head. Perkins learns that John and Marcus have been in contact and informs Vigo. So Vigo sends his thugs to Marcus' house in retribution for Joseph's death and for failing to kill John. They thrash him there until Perkins arrives and fatally shoot him. Just as Vigo is about to leave the house, he calls John and tells him that he has killed his friend. Vigo then leaves for a helicopter that is going to take him away from the city. The plan is that John will come to Marcus' house and Perkins will ambush him. Perkins is summoned to a meeting with Winston, the proprietor of the Continental Hotel. While waiting for John to arrive at Marcus' house at the Bethesda Arcade in Central Park, she encounters Winston and 4 other men. Winston informs her that she has violated the Continental's rules, and as a consequence, her membership has been rescinded. The 4 men carry out her execution. As Winston departs, he crosses paths with the same cleaner who aided John in disposing of the assassin's remains and gives him a small gratuity. Upon discovering Marcus's lifeless body, John embarks on a mission to eliminate Vigo. He spots Vigo and one of their associates en route to a helicopter and attempts to crash his car into them. Vigo orders Avi to take out John, but John's vehicle slams into Avi instead. Vigo endeavors to push John's car off a cliff, but John survives. The two then engage in a rain-soaked hand-to-hand confrontation. Vigo makes an attempt to assault John, but John employs the blade to gain leverage, breaking Vigo's arm, then retrieves the knife from his abdomen and thrusts it into Vigo's neck, leaving him to his fate. We return to the opening scene. As John continues to bleed, he feels motivated to keep going. After seeing the video with Helen, he enters a dog shelter to treat his knife wound. He then adopts a pit bull puppy and brings him home with him. Among John Wick's skills and abilities, which one impresses you the most and why? Make sure to comment. And thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to get new movie recaps.